ESPN's Doug Gottlieb joins us now. And Doug, did Curry make the right decision?
Well, I mean, if he wants to be a professional basketball player, he has a tremendous following based on not just this year, but especially last year's performance in the NCAA tournament. But I think, Hannah, the bigger question is, where does he go? I mean, you have Brandon Jennings, who frankly has far more talent and upside, not as refined as Steph Curry as a shooter. But he's been playing a year overseas in Italy, playing sparingly, but improving his game. You have guys like Jeff Teague, Johnny Flynn, Ty Lawson, who we expect to declare for the draft today. Even Drew Holiday at UCLA are seen as guys with more upside. And then you have Steph, who's a spectacular shooter, but not a true point. He's going to measure out at just over 6'1", not at 6'3" that he's listed at. And there's just this sense that he's not the big-time athlete, although he is a big shot maker and a big-time a playmaker in terms of giving the ball and he can find a way to get in the basket. Look, if he wants to be a pro, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. But I think right now his name value is carrying him a little bit more than the actual efficiency on the basketball floor. So it's going to be interesting to see where he pans out.
People are talking about whether or not you have the size, the weight. Is that something that you think about, or is that something that you'll just play through?
I'll just play through, and I'm gonna get stronger. I'm gonna gain some weight. I'm gonna get quicker and faster. Just working with the strength guys and whatever team I'm on, and being that my focus every day. I heard criticism all my life, so it's nothing different for me. I know how to brush it off and just play my game. I did well in college, or well enough in college where that shouldn't be an issue, I don't think.
With the 7th pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Golden State Warriors select Stephen Curry from Davidson College.
The 6'3" junior guard out of Davidson, who quite simply is the best shooter in the draft.
You recently told me you had a chance to speak with NBA point guard and all-star Chris Paul about the transition from a college point guard to an NBA point guard. What did he say to you?
You know, just be consistent, because every night you're going to be playing against the best in the world that know that position very well. So you can't have any off nights. You can be friends off the court, but once you get on the court, it's all about business and taking care of that. So that's some good advice.
He's a 4-time NBA champion, a 2-time league MVP, a member of our 75th anniversary team, and for the first time ever, he's an NBA Finals MVP. The 2022 Bill Russell NBA Finals MVP award goes to Stephen Curry.
In life, a few things are inevitable. Death,
Mamba out, not forgotten. Live on, brother.
taxes, and NBA teams passing up on generational talent.
This is the greatest shooter since mankind existed. I've never seen a shooter greater than Steph Curry. I mean, it's off the dribble, it's spot up, it's anywhere on the floor.
And I mean, there have been quite some bad ones. And I'm talking about instances like Darko Milicic getting picked over Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh consecutively. The time when Greg Oden went first overall over Kevin Durant. When some dude named Marcus Fizer was selected as the Chicago Bulls' top selection in the 2000 NBA draft to apparently fulfill Michael Jordan's shoes. Or when the Cleveland Cavaliers failed in 3 consecutive NBA drafts in trying to draft the next LeBron. And finally, when these 6 guys were taken ahead of Steph Curry in the 2009 NBA draft. But wait a minute, hold up. The Timberwolves had 2 opportunities at drafting Steph Curry. Yep, Ricky Rubio and Johnny freaking Flynn. Anyway, there is only one of these 6 players that will get any type of pass. That, of course, being James Harden, who, although he isn't nearly the player that Steph Curry turned into, he's still an A+ draft pick nonetheless. You see, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and, forgive me for bringing this up, you Thunder fans, the Thunder somehow only retained James Harden for just 3 seasons. The guy who would go on to help revolutionize basketball from the perimeter and the step-back jump shot.
With the 3rd pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select James Harden of Arizona State University.
OKC fumbled Harden to the Houston Rockets for Kevin Martin and Jeremy Lamb just months after a trip to the NBA Finals led by a trio of future MVPs who were only preparing to blossom into one of the best players in the entire NBA. I think about it all the time. Would that team, led by young Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden, have turned into an NBA dynasty with just a little more time? Would they have potentially become the Golden State Warriors? And I'm saying the Golden State Warriors before the Golden State Warriors. And besides, was it really all that hard to pay James Harden just a few million more if it meant at least a few more finals appearances after that? The trade worked out for James Harden personally, but not so much for OKC. Because see, Harden, he would go on to win MVP, become a consensus all-star, and a member of the All-NBA team. At this point, he's also become, if not the best left-handed player of all time, definitely one of the top, definitely one of the greatest scorers of all time, and already a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. Now, OKC, yeah, they stayed above water and were title contenders even after James Harden left. But did the trade hurt them? 1000%. And you know, I don't know exactly what to make of this. With the first pick in the 2009 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Clippers took a high-flying big man, Blake Griffin, from Oklahoma. And when I say I don't know what to make of this, I'm saying that it's hard to justify whether or not this was, in hindsight, a highly successful pick. Was Blake Griffin a bust? No, not by any means. But did he meet and exceed expectations? I would say a firm no. Especially when you look at the fact that he and Lana wrote, yeah, we'll save that for another video. But staying on topic, why? Because see, the first pick in the draft isn't just someone who's asked to score 20-something points a night and make a few all-star teams. First picks are usually tasks with lifting a franchise into legitimate contention and completely changing the entire dynamic of that franchise. Now, Blake Griffin eventually paired with Chris Paul, Jamal Crawford, and many more. That definitely made the Clippers a really talented team. But even with all that being said, there wasn't even one single conference finals appearance to show for it. And actually, let me take you back to a pretty significant time in NBA history. The 2015 NBA postseason truly looked like it would be the Clippers' year. In the first round, the Clippers convincingly defeated the defending world champion San Antonio Spurs, which put the Clippers on the map. Then, up 3-1 over a James Harden-led Houston Rockets team in the semifinals, it really looked inevitable. It looked like for the first time in Clippers franchise history that Blake Griffin and Chris Paul would lead the team to the conference finals for the opportunity to punch their ticket into the NBA finals. The dreaded 3-1 lead. The dreaded 3-1 lead. It looks and feels so comfortable, yet it's so not comfortable until you squeeze in that fourth victory. Because once that opposing team wins Game 5, that feeling starts sticking into a team's guts. Okay, let me ask you this. How do you go from winning by 33 points and securing a 3-1 lead to turning right back around and losing Game 5 by 21 points? Actually, allow me to do you even one better. How on earth do you go from this to this?
34-point swing in this one. Paul finally knocks one down, and that will do it. One of the most stunning comebacks.
And that's not even the worst part. You do that against a team without their best player? Hey, I'm not kidding. The Rockets, led by Jason Terry and Josh Smith, ran the table down the stretch of this game, with James Harden playing all of 0 fourth quarter minutes and arguably changed the course of NBA history. Yes, the Clippers lost Game 7 on the road, and that would turn out to be the closest the Clippers with Blake Griffin would ever get to the NBA Finals. And they weren't close even then.
The Houston Rockets will play in their first conference final in 18 years as they win Game 7, wire to wire.
After this, the Clippers would go on to suffer back-to-back first-round exits. Chris Paul would eventually end up getting traded to the Rockets to play with James Harden just a couple summers later. And Blake Griffin, he followed shortly thereafter, even after recently signing a brand new huge extension that had us really thinking that the Clippers would continue to run with Blake for several more years. In the end, it didn't really work out all that well for either side. And what we all knew as Lob City in LA, the Clippers absolutely blew up. And unfortunately, that was all of the somewhat good players that were selected ahead of Steph Curry in the 2009 NBA draft. And now for the bad ones. Hasheem Thabeet, Johnny Flynn, Ricky Rubio, and Tyreke Evans. And I gotta be honest, I really hate to include Tyreke Evans in this list because, well, If you know, you know. That man was a straight up bucket getter, but like a fraction of the top draft picks in NBA history, injuries really sold Evans well shorter and never allowed him to become the player that he was clearly so ready to become. In fact, that year he took home the Rookie of the Year award after a flattering rookie year that put Evans on the map as one of the very best young players in the NBA. How many guys in NBA history who either went straight from high school to the pros or were one and done out of college entered the NBA and averaged 20 points per game? There are only a handful of guys who've pulled something like that off ever. You see, Evans, he stayed relatively healthy on the Kings, but the problem was that the Kings' backcourt became increasingly cluttered with more and more young talent. And when the Kings chose to put all their eggs in Ben McLemore's basket by taking the Kansas product with their top choice in the 2013 NBA draft, Tyreke Evans took his talents to the Pelicans, and the Kings were left with, well, nothing really outside of DeMarcus Cousins. Why did the Kings decide that Evans wouldn't fit in the franchise long-term plans? I have no idea. But then again, this entire video has been about a whole lot of me having zero idea why teams did what they did. So moving along, to make this very long story short, the Minnesota Timberwolves tried drafting their backcourt of the future with back-to-back draft choices that failed so miserably. Now yes, I realize that Ricky Rubio, he's been a productive player in the NBA for many years now and has proved to be one of the best backup point guards in the NBA. But did he change life? Nah. And don't even get me started on Johnny Flynn. Now, okay, to be fair, he wasn't all that bad his rookie season, but it was straight downhill after that. You had two chances at Steph Curry, and no, I won't stop saying that. Yeah, I get it. Steph was and still is so babyface, so willowy, and looks so unintimidating that I think it played a legitimate role in teams not wanting to pull the trigger so soon on Steph Curry. The Timberwolves draft choices proved so bad that they won a combined 62 games in 3 seasons. They were simply the least winning franchise before and after the 2009 NBA draft. In fact, they might have been worse in the years after the Rubio and Flynn picks. Johnny Flynn only lasted 3 NBA seasons before going to play overseas. And after that, not you, nor do I, know what's happened to him since. And yeah, I saved the worst for last. Look, it made sense for the Grizzlies to do what they did that night of the 2009 draft. Their team was improving, the backcourt was led by a couple of promising young stars, Mike Conley, and at the time, the highly touted OJ Mayo. And now, it was time to help round out the puzzle by going after a star big man that would help launch Memphis into contention. So, why not take a chance on a 7'3" defensive-minded big man with superior athleticism? Boy, oh boy. If the Grizzlies didn't miss so wildly with this pick, I reckon they would have had a unique opportunity at winning a championship in the early 2010s. Even after the fact, the Grizzlies remained a solid team, a steady 50 to 55-ish win team that would always be a threat to knock out some of the top dogs in the conference because of their tenacious defensive spirit and the effective 1-2 punch of Mike Conley and Marc Gasol. Those two really kept the Grizzlies afloat and a reputable team, if you think about it, really throughout much of the previous decade.
They're letting him get after it a little bit. Conley now with Parker on him, little right-handed floater, and there's that offhand again.
But if you were to put Steph Curry or James Harden on those Grizzly teams, again, we can never present a possibility as a fact, but I definitely believe at least that would have been a dominant team from top to bottom. I look at the 6 players and the 6 teams and what happened to them in the aftermath of the 2009 NBA draft, and my thoughts exactly are that 0 of those teams were winners. The Clippers with Blake Griffin never reached their great potential. Hasheem Thabeet was a massive flop, though the Grizzlies were still a solid team even after the fact. The Thunder, they absolutely fumbled the bag with James Harden. The Kings, they were never sold on the promising Tyreke Evans even after he won Rookie of the Year. The Timberwolves, I mean, come on, Ricky Rubio, Johnny Flynn, don't get me started. Blake, he turned out pretty good. James Harden became an all-time great. The rest, they became afterthoughts. Moral of the story, Steph Curry would have been the answer for all 6 of those teams. The 6 players that went ahead of Steph Curry never came even remotely close to being better than Steph Curry. We're talking about a guy in Steph Curry who has literally changed and revolutionized basketball. I know there might have been a point in time where James Harden versus Steph might have been debatable for some. As far far as who the better player is. For me, it's never even been that this might have just been the most confounding draft in NBA history. And maybe the even crazier part, the 6 players that went after Steph Curry never made it to the top either, and neither did any of those teams. Well, outside of DeMar DeRozan, who went 9th overall to the Raptors. Isn't it amazing how a once 175-pound guard coming out of Davidson, not even one of the overall top programs, changed the course of recent NBA history? Now, there's a whole lot of what ifs, ands, and buts in sports, but any what ifs in regards to Steph Curry, that's an entirely different story on its own. That man, Steph Curry, is something else.